I never saw it coming, the quiet collapse of everything I'd poured my life into. My name is Richard, and this is the raw, unfiltered truth of how I lost it all, not just the wealth, the penthouses, or the empire I built from nothing, but the one thing I thought no one could take, my place in the world. It was 2019 in a sleek Manhattan boardroom, the air thick with the scent of polished mahogany and ambition, when I caught the glint in his eyes. My protégé, Ethan, the young man, I'd mentored like a son. His easy smile, the way he always tapped his pen against his thumb, hid a truth I couldn't see. He'd been plotting my erasure for years. The sting of betrayal still coils in my chest, a bitter blend of grief and fury that haunts my sleepless nights. I gave him everything, my trust, my secrets, the keys to my kingdom, only to watch him rewrite my name out of existence. The world I fought for moved on, his face on every headline, mine fading like a ghost. How do you rebuild when the person you loved like family dismantles your soul? What do you do when every memory of pride is poisoned by their deceit? I keep replaying that rainy October afternoon, the city blurred beyond my office window, when I handed Ethan the keys to my corner suite, my heart swelling with a father's pride. I didn't know it was the last time I'd stand there as its master. I didn't know he'd been hiding a secret so devastating it would shatter my world. What happened next wasn't just betrayal. It was something I never could have imagined. This is my story, a confession of my failures, my pain, and the fragile hope I'm clawing toward. If you've ever been pushed aside, forgotten, or left to rebuild from ashes, I hope my truth speaks to you. Join me as I unravel this decade-long journey of loss and redemption. Share your own story of being replaced or rising again in the comments. I want to hear it. Hit that subscribe button to walk this path with me. You won't believe where it leads. I never saw it coming, the quiet unraveling of everything I'd bled for, the way a life can fray at the edges until it's just threads in your hands. My name is Richard, and this is the raw, ugly truth of how I lost it all. Not just the money, the penthouses, the private jets that sliced through clouds like my ambition once did, but my place in the world. My name. It was 2019, a Manhattan boardroom, the kind of place where power hums like a live wire. Dim light spilled across polished mahogany, shadows pooling in the corners, the air thick with coffee and the sour tang of ambition. That's when I caught it, the glint in Ethan's eyes. My protégé, the kid I'd raised like a son, his easy smile sharp as a switchblade, his thumb tapping that damn pen against his palm. It was a tick, a nothing, but it hid a truth I was too blind to see. He'd been plotting my erasure for years, sharpening his knife in the dark. The boardroom buzzed with investors, their Rolexes glinting under the chandelier, their laughter a low, greedy hum. Ethan's glance cut through the noise, a blade of a look cold and precise. I shrugged it off, my chest swelling with pride at his fire, the way he owned the room. I'd molded him, hadn't I? 10 years ago, he was a scrappy kid, all hungry eyes and cheap sneakers, begging for a chance at my firm. I gave him my world, opened the doors to my empire, handed him the keys to my kingdom without a second thought. Fool. That day, he pitched a strategy, bold, ruthless, the kind of move I'd have made in my prime. His voice was smooth, commanding, like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. The room erupted, investors clapping like trained seals, their eyes on him, not me. So I beamed, blind to the shift, the way power tilted under my feet like a ship taking on water. I was still the king, wasn't I? The man who'd built this empire from a single deal, a handshake in a dive bar decades ago. But Ethan was no longer my shadow. He was something else, something I couldn't name. Late that night, I found him in my office, the city's neon pulse bleeding through the windows. He was rifling through my files, papers scattered like a crime scene. Just learning, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes, a flicker of guilt. Or was it defiance? In his gaze. I laughed, waved it off, but the unease settled in my gut, a cold stone I couldn't shake. I lay awake that night, the city's hum seeping through my penthouse walls, a restless drone of taxis and ambition. Was that glint in his eyes just drive, the kind I'd taught him, or was it a knife waiting to carve me out of my own life? The sting of what's coming still burns, a warning I didn't heed. Ethan was my pride, my legacy, the son I'd never had. But shadows don't just follow, they creep, they consume. And I didn't see how deep his shadow had grown, how it was already choking the light I'd built, ready to swallow me whole. Trust is a house of cards, delicate and dumb, one wrong breath, and it's gone. I trusted Ethan with my soul, my secrets, my strategies, the blueprint of an empire I'd carved from nothing. He was the son I never had, the one to carry my name when I was dust. But trust is a liar's playground, and I was about to learn how well Ethan played. Weeks after that boardroom glint, I stood in my corner suite, rain smearing the Manhattan skyline like a bad painting. It was October 2019, and I handed him the keys to my office, my heart swollen with a father's pride, thick and foolish. The metal was cold in my palm, heavier than it should have been. The company gala came next, a glittering cage of champagne flutes and fake laughs in a ballroom dripping with chandeliers. Ethan moved through the crowd like a shark, his arm around my daughter Claire, her nervous laugh cutting through the clink of glasses. She blushed, her fingers twisting her necklace, a habit from childhood I'd almost forgotten. Whispers trailed them, board members, their eyes gleaming with something I couldn't place. I stood by the bar sipping bourbon, telling myself it was pride, not unease, curling in my gut. Then I overheard it. A board member, half drunk, praising Ethan's vision. My vision repackaged in his slick voice, my ideas wearing his name. Doubt stabbed me, sharp and cold, but I pushed it down, drowning it in liquor. Later, Ethan found me in the crowd, his smile too perfect. "You should step back, Richard," he said, voice smooth as silk, eyes all false concern. "Enjoy your legacy, you've earned it." I nodded, weary, my bones heavy with years of battles. It sounded right, didn't it? A king passing the torch. But his words felt rehearsed, a script he'd practiced in the dark. I wanted to believe him, wanted to see the boy I'd mentored, not the man who was already rewriting me out of my story. Back in my penthouse, the city's pulse throbbing beyond the glass, I found an old photo in a drawer, Ethan and me at his first company retreat, his teenage smirk sharp as a blade. It wasn't the kid I remembered, all gratitude and grit. This smirk was knowing, like he'd already seen the endgame. The photo slipped from my hand, and a glass followed, shattering. On the hardwood, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I stared at the shards, the city's lights blurring into streaks of wet neon. Had I missed something all along? Was that smirk a promise, a warning? I didn't know then that those keys I'd handed over weren't just to my office. They were to my ruin. The rain kept falling, smudging the world outside, and I stood there alone, the weight of my trust pressing down like a noose. Ethan was my creation, my pride, but creations can turn, can bite. And I was starting to feel the teeth, sinking in, slow, steady, invisible. The city hummed its restless song, and I wondered if I'd already lost more than I could ever take back. My world didn't collapse. It frayed piece by piece like a rope worn thin. Ethan's betrayal wasn't a single, clean cut. It was 1,000 tiny slices, each one sharper, deeper, drawing blood I didn't see. I built an empire, but empires crumble when you're not looking. Weeks after the gala, I walked into a boardroom, the air sterile with antiseptic and ambition, expecting my chair at the head of the table. Ethan sat there instead, his posture easy, kingly, my throne stolen. The board members' eyes slid away from me, their silence louder than the city's traffic snarling outside. I stood frozen, a stranger in my own kingdom. Claire was next, her betrayal a different kind of knife. At dinner, her voice sharp as glass, she called me paranoid, her fingers twisting that damn necklace. "You're overreacting, Dad," she said, her eyes avoiding mine, already half lost to Ethan's charm. When had I lost her? Was it the years I spent building instead of listening? The nights I chose deals over bedtime stories? Her words burned, a betrayal deeper than Ethan's, because she was my blood, my heart. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I just sat there, my fork scraping the plate, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. Then I found it. Ethan meeting my biggest clients, deals signed without my name, my signature erased like I was already a ghost. I dug through emails in my penthouse, the city's neon glow mocking me through the glass. One message stopped me cold. Ethan to a board member, words clinical, calculated. Richard slipping, it read, each letter a needle in my spine. My hands shook, rage and grief tangling like wires in my chest. He wasn't just taking my company, he was rewriting my existence, painting me as a relic. I confronted him at home, the living room dim, the air thick with rain and regret. "You're imagining things," Ethan said, his smile ablaze, his eyes cold as the marble floor. But there was no warmth in him anymore, no trace of the kid I'd mentored. He was a stranger, a predator wearing a familiar face. I wanted to grab him, demand answers, but his calm was a wall I couldn't breach. He left me standing there, the echo of his footsteps louder than my heartbeat. That night alone, the city's hum was a taunt, a reminder of everything slipping through my fingers. My chest ached, a wound I couldn't name, part fury, part sorrow. How do you fight when the enemy wears your family's face? Ethan was my creation, Claire my heart, and both were turning against me. I stared at the skyline, its jagged edges like teeth, and felt the first fracture in my soul. Was this how it ends? Not with a bang, but with whispers, with betrayal dressed as love. Have you ever seen someone you love turn against you, their eyes telling you you're already gone? Ethan's ambition wasn't hunger, it was venom, a slow poison seeping through my world, staining everything I'd built. I saw it now in the way he moved, sleek and predatory, claiming my empire as his own. But I wasn't ready to let go, not yet, not while my blood still burned. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled man with eyes like cigarette burns, the kind who'd seen too many lies. Waiting for his report felt like drowning, the city's horns blaring outside my penthouse, a relentless scream that matched the panic in my chest. I paced, the hardwood creaking, my reflection in the glass a ghost of the man I'd been. Then Claire dropped her bomb. At dinner, her voice bright but brittle, she announced her engagement to Ethan. "He's my future," she said, her fingers twisting her necklace, her eyes avoiding mine. The words landed like a fist, cracking my heart clean through. I saw my ruin in her smile, in the way she leaned into him, my daughter slipping into his orbit. I wanted to scream, to tear the ring from her finger, but I just sat there, my wine glass, trembling, the room's warmth turning to ash. The investigator called, his voice gravelly through the phone's static. Encrypted files on Ethan's laptop, offshore accounts. My money siphoned like blood from a vein. I stared at the numbers, my pulse pounding, each digit a betrayal carved in code. I confronted Claire the next night, my voice breaking, begging her to see Ethan's lies. "You're jealous," she snapped, her eyes flashing, and stormed out, leaving me in the dark, the apartment's silence heavier than the city's roar. I was alone now, truly alone, the kind of loneliness that chews at your bones. The shareholder meeting was the final blow. Ethan stood at the podium, his voice smooth as oil, unveiling a rebrand. My company's name erased, his slapped on like a cheap sticker. The room cheered, their applause a knife twisting in my gut. My legacy, the thing I'd bled for, was gone, spat on by the kid I'd raised. I stood at the back, invisible, my hands clenched until my knuckles bled. He'd taken everything, my name, my daughter, my world, and they clapped for it. Every night I saw that rainy afternoon, the keys in his hand, my pride a noose around my neck. I woke, gasping, my empire dissolving like ash in the wind. The city's pulse mocked me, its lights flickering like Ethan's smile, all charm and no soul. I wasn't done fighting, but the venom was deep, spreading, turning my blood to ice. I'd built him, given him my trust, and he'd used it to carve me out. Was there anything left to save, or was I just clawing at ghosts? The investigator's number burned in my pocket, a last thread of hope. But hope is a dangerous thing when you're already bleeding out. I thought I knew Ethan's worst, thought I'd seen the bottom of his betrayal. I was wrong. His secret wasn't just about power or money. It was a knife forged decades ago, aimed straight at my heart. The investigator's call came late, his voice a rasp through the phone, cutting through the city's restless hum. Ethan wasn't. Just my protégé. He was the son of James, my old business partner, the one I'd forced out in '95, leaving him with nothing but rage. Ethan was raised on that hate. Every smile a lie, every handshake a step toward my ruin. My trust was his weapon, and he'd wielded it with surgical precision. James's revenge wasn't a spur-of-the-moment grudge. It was a legacy, passed down like a family curse. Ethan had been groomed for this, his childhood steeped in stories of my betrayal, my greed. Every moment I'd seen as mentorship, he'd seen as an opportunity, a chance to dismantle me. I found letters he wrote to Claire, hidden in a drawer in my old office, promising to free her from my shadow, my control. His words were venom, turning my daughter against me, painting me as the monster. I read them in the dark, the paper trembling, the city's neon glow a cruel spotlight on my failure. I confronted Ethan in my old suite, now his, the walls mocking me with their familiar mahogany. "You deserve this," he sneered, his voice icy, but there was a flicker in his eyes, pain maybe, or regret. He wasn't a machine, not entirely, but that humanity made his cruelty worse. He'd chosen this, chosen to destroy me, and I'd handed him the tools. I left, my legs shaking, the elevator's hum a funeral dirge. Outside, rain slicked the streets, and I drove, tears blurring the road, nearly crashing into a cab. The city screamed around me, horns and lights, but inside it was silent, a void where my empire, my daughter, my name used to be. The weight of his secret crushed me, a boulder on my chest, stealing my breath. I'd built my life on trust, on pride, but it was all a lie, a house built on sand. How do you forgive yourself for crafting your own destruction, for loving the wrong person? I saw James's face in Ethan's now, the same hard eyes, the same hunger for revenge. My past had come back, not to haunt but to gut me. The road stretched ahead, endless, empty, and I gripped the wheel, wondering if I was already gone, just a ghost driving through a city that no longer knew my name. What would you do if your past came back, wearing the face of someone you loved to tear you apart? I was a king once, untouchable, my name carved into the city's skyline. Now I'm a ghost, drifting through a life that's no longer mine, watching Ethan wear my crown like he was born to it. But ghosts can haunt, can claw their way back. And I wasn't done. The board's vote came like a guillotine, their voices cold, final, as they ousted me from my own company. Security escorted me out, their hands firm, the lobby's marble echoing my humiliation, each step a nail in my coffin. I didn't look back, couldn't, the weight of their eyes burning holes in my spine. My penthouse was gone, sold to cover. Debts Ethan pinned on me, debts I didn't owe. I moved to a cramped apartment, the walls stained with someone else's mistakes, the air thick with mildew and regret. The city's hum was louder here, invasive, seeping through thin windows. Claire ignored my calls, her silence a blade sharper than Ethan's lies. Then I saw it online. Her wedding announcement, Ethan's smirk plastered beside her smile. I smashed my phone, the screen splintering like my heart, shards cutting my palm. Blood dripped, a small, real pain against the ache in my chest. I started, digging into James's past, Ethan's father, the man I'd betrayed decades ago. Guilt rose like bile, memories of our fallout, his desperate pleas, my cold dismissal. I'd buried that shame, but it was alive now, clawing at me. Then Sarah, a former employee, found me in a diner, her eyes nervous, her hands shaking as she slid a USB drive across the table. "Ethan's bribing regulators," she whispered, her voice low, urgent. "He's marrying Claire to hurt you, to twist the knife." Her words landed like a punch, stealing my breath. The drive burned in. My pocket, a lifeline, a weapon. The skyline outside my window mocked me, its glittering towers a reminder of my fall. I wasn't the man who'd built them anymore, but I wasn't nothing either. Ghosts don't just fade, they strike. I spent nights poring over James's old deals, searching for leverage, each page a mirror to my own sins. Sarah's words echoed. Ethan's marriage was a calculated move, a way to sever me from Claire, to make her his trophy in my ruin. The thought of her in his arms, believing his lies, made my blood boil, my hands clench until my knuckles bled. I wasn't fighting for my empire anymore. That was gone, ashes in the wind. I was fighting for Claire, for the chance to be her father again, to claw back what Ethan had stolen. The USB drive was my last shot, a spark in the dark. The city's pulse thrummed outside, relentless, and I felt it in my bones. A ghost's revenge doesn't come loud, doesn't announce itself. It creeps, it waits, and when it strikes, it cuts deep. I wasn't done, not by a long shot, but the shadows were growing and I didn't know how much time I had left. I was down, beaten, bloody, but not broken. Ethan thought he'd erased me, painted me out of my own life, but I'd built empires from nothing, scraps, sweat, and sheer will. I could do it again. I met Lena, a journalist, in a dingy cafe, the air sour with burnt coffee and desperation. Her eyes were sharp, hungry for a story that could break the world open. I slid the USB drive across the table, its weight heavier than the city outside, horns blaring through the grimy windows. "This ends him," I said, my voice low, steady. Hope flickered, a match in the dark. Ethan's engagement party was everywhere, plastered across social media like a taunt, his smirk a blade in my chest. I crashed it, the ballroom a glittering trap of champagne and fake smiles. I pushed through, the crowd, my suit wrinkled, out of place among their tailored perfection. "You stole my life," I said, my voice cutting through the music, the room falling silent. Ethan's eyes narrowed, but his smile held, practiced, perfect. The guests stared, their whispers a hiss, but I didn't care. I wanted him to feel me, to know I wasn't gone. Claire was there, her face pale, her fingers twisting her necklace. "You're ruining us," she screamed, her slap stinging my cheek, tears streaming down her face. But her eyes flickered. Doubt. Maybe, or something deeper, a crack in the wall Ethan had built around her. I left, the silence heavier than the city's roar, my face burning, but that flicker kept me alive. She wasn't lost, not completely, and that was enough to keep fighting. Lena's article dropped like a bomb, exposing Ethan's bribes, his lies, the rot at the heart of his empire. The stock plummeted, headlines screaming his name for all the wrong reasons. I watched from my apartment, the TV's glow casting shadows on the cracked walls, a grim smile creeping across my face. He'd built his throne on my bones. But bones don't bend, they break things. My phone rang, Ethan's voice shaking, no longer smooth. "You'll pay for this, Richard," he snarled, fear lacing his words like poison. I laughed, the sound foreign, raw. His fear was my fuel. The city outside thrummed, its pulse sinking with mine, a fire I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't the king anymore, but I wasn't a ghost either. I was something new, something dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose. Ethan had underestimated me, thought he could bury me in his lies, but I'd clawed my way out of worse. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. Claire's doubt, Lena's article, the USB drive, they were weapons and I was learning to wield them. The skyline glittered, no longer mocking but watching, waiting. Ethan wasn't the only one who could play dirty, and I was just getting started. The truth was out, raw and bleeding, but it didn't set me free. Ethan's claws were sunk deep into my world, my company, my daughter, my name, and pulling them out meant ripping myself apart. Claire showed up at my apartment, unannounced, her face streaked with tears, her engagement ring glinting like a taunt. "I found his letters," she whispered, voice breaking, clutching papers that smelled of ink and betrayal. Ethan had written to another woman, promises of a future that didn't include Claire. Her world was crumbling, and for the first time, I saw my daughter, not his pawn. I sat her down, the apartment's dim light casting shadows on her trembling hands. I told her about James, Ethan's father, the revenge plot that had shaped him, every word a weight I'd carried alone. "He was raised to hate me," I said, my voice soft, cracked. Claire listened, her fingers twisting her necklace, her eyes searching mine for something. Trust, maybe, or the father she'd lost. But she didn't take off the ring, not yet, and that hesitation cut deeper than any knife. She was torn, caught between his lies and my truth, and I couldn't reach her fully. Ethan was arrested for fraud, the news blaring from my TV, but he was out on bail by nightfall, his voice hissing through my phone. "I'm not done, Richard," he said, each word dripping with venom, a promise of worse to come. Fear crept in, cold and sharp, but I pushed it down. I met with the board the next day, offering to rebuild what Ethan had broken. The room was sterile, their eyes skeptical, but one nodded, a spark of respect I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Claire stayed that night, sleeping on my couch, her breathing uneven like she was fighting dreams. "I don't know who to believe," she whispered before dawn, her voice fragile, her ring still on. I wanted to hold her, to promise I'd fix it, but promises were brittle things now. I watched her sleep, the city's hum a restless undertone, and felt the weight of my failures, every deal I'd chased, every moment I'd missed with her. I wasn't just fighting Ethan anymore. I was fighting for her, for us. The city outside was a beast, its lights flickering like Ethan's threats, but I wasn't backing down. Tearing out his claws meant tearing open old wounds, my guilt over James, my distance from Claire. But I'd bleed if it meant saving her. Every step forward was like walking on glass, sharp and unsteady, but I wasn't alone anymore. Claire's doubt, her tears were a bridge, fragile but real. The fight was changing, and I was learning to fight not just for my name, but for the family I'd almost lost. The skyline watched, its glow no longer cruel but waiting, holding its breath for what came next. Ethan's empire was crumbling, dust and lies, but he wasn't going quietly. His last move was a blade aimed at my soul, and I was running out of strength to dodge it. He leaked a forged document, accusing me of embezzling millions, my name, splashed across tabloids like cheap ink. The press swarmed, their cameras flashing outside my apartment, turning my life into a circus. I stood at my window, the city's pulse a mocking rhythm, and felt the weight of decades pressing down, each headline a hammer blow. I was tired, bone deep, ready to let it all go. Claire found me like that, her voice raw, urgent. "Don't give up, Dad," she said, her eyes wet, her ring finally gone. Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I'd lost so much, my empire, my name, but she was here, fighting for me. And that was enough. I dug through old files, searching for something to fight back with. When I found it, a voicemail from Claire, age 10, her voice bright, calling me her hero. It broke me open, reignited a fire I thought had died. I wasn't done, not when she still believed in me. I tracked down James, Ethan's father, in a rundown nursing home, his face a map of regrets. He was frail, a shadow of the man I'd betrayed, but his eyes still burned. "Ethan's plan was mine," he confessed, voice trembling, handing me recorded calls, proof of his son's revenge. His words were a mirror, showing my own sins, but also a weapon, sharp and final. I held them like a grenade, ready to pull the pin. The press conference was my last stand, a sterile hotel ballroom, the air thick with anticipation. I played James's recordings, his voice echoing, exposing Ethan's lies, his revenge, the forged document. The crowd gasped, cameras flashing, but I searched for Claire in the back, her tears glinting in the light. She nodded, just once, and it was enough. My name wasn't clean yet, but it was mine again, wrested from Ethan's grip. The city outside roared, its skyline no longer a taunt, but a witness to my fight. Ethan's fall was coming, but so was mine in a way. I'd lost too, much to go back to who I was. Claire's nod was my anchor, my reason to keep standing, but the cost of this war was carved into me. Every choice I'd made, every moment I'd chosen ambition over her. The world saw me now, a man clawing his way back, but it was her eyes that mattered, her belief that kept me from breaking. The fight wasn't over, not completely, but I'd struck the final blow, and whatever came next, I'd face it with her, not alone. Losing everything didn't destroy me. It stripped me bare, left me raw, and showed me what mattered. Ethan's empire was dust now. His convictions splashed across headlines, my name cleared in their wake. But the victory was hollow, a ghost of what I'd thought I wanted. I stood in a diner with Claire, the air thick with coffee and second chances. Her voice fragile as she said, "I'm trying, Dad." She'd left Ethan, her ring gone, but the distance between us lingered, a wound we were only starting to stitch. Her eyes, though, held something new. Hope, maybe, or the start of forgiveness. I started a consultancy in a small office, the city's hum a steady pulse outside, no longer mocking but grounding. I mentored young dreamers, kids with hungry eyes like Ethan once had, but I saw them clearer now, knew the difference between ambition and venom. The work wasn't about penthouses or power. It was purpose, a reason to get up, to keep going. I'd lost my empire, but I'd found something else, something quieter, truer. The skyline watched, its lights softer, like it was finally on my side. I visited James's grave, the air sharp with autumn, the earth cold under my knees. I forgave. Him, his hate, his son, forgave myself too for the choices that set this all in motion. The weight lifted, not gone but lighter, the city's breath cleaner in my lungs. I wasn't the man who'd built towers anymore, but I wasn't a ghost either. I was Richard, flawed, scarred, but still here, still fighting for something real. Late. At night I wrote Claire a letter, my pen shaking, vowing to be the father she deserved, the one I'd failed to be. I left it on her doorstep, unsigned, a quiet promise I wasn't ready to voice. She didn't need to read it yet, didn't need to forgive me today. We were rebuilding, slow and messy, like the city itself, always tearing down and rising again. I walked home, the streets alive with horns and heartbeats, and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace, fragile but real. This journey broke me, shattered every piece I thought defined me, but it showed me what lasts. Not empires, not names, but the people you fight for. If you've ever lost your world, your family, your fight, I hope my story lights a path back, shows you the ashes can spark something new. The city's still out there waiting, its pulse a reminder that nothing's final, not even ruin. Share your own rise from the ashes below, your story of clawing back what matters. Like if this cut deep, hit subscribe. We're not done walking. This road, you and me. There's more to build, more to fight for, and I'm not going anywhere.